The garden venue glowed under a canopy of fairy lights, each bulb a tiny star in the warm California dusk. My sister Claire's wedding was a vision of perfection, but the magic shattered when my boyfriend Ethan abandoned me to chase after his ex. He thought I'd stand there, humiliated, swallowing my pride as I always had. He didn't know the best man, Lucas, was watching it all unfold. By the night's end, I wasn't the one left broken. If you've ever been betrayed in front of everyone you love, this story is for you. 3 months ago, I stood in my small apartment, staring into the full-length mirror propped against my bedroom wall. The emerald green dress I'd chosen for Claire's wedding hugged my curves just right, its silky fabric catching the light. I'd spent weeks searching for it, wanting something elegant but understated, something that wouldn't draw attention, away from Claire. Ethan was behind me, fumbling with his cufflinks, his navy suit sharp, but his movements distracted. His phone buzzed incessantly on the dresser, each notification pulling his eyes away from me. I caught his reflection, jaw tight, brows furrowed, like he was waiting for something to go wrong. "You nervous about meeting my family?" I asked, forcing a smile as I stepped over to adjust his tie. His hands stilled, and he gave me that half-smile I'd come to recognize over our 2 years together, the one that never reached his hazel eyes. "Just work stuff," he muttered, brushing off my question. "Big project deadline." Work. It was always work with Ethan lately, his excuse for every late night, every unanswered text. But today was supposed to be different. Today was about Claire, about love, about showing up as a couple for my sister's big day. I pushed down the unease, the little voice in my head whispering that something wasn't right. The drive to the venue in Sonoma was quiet, save for the soft hum of the car and the relentless ping of Ethan's phone. I counted 9 notifications in 20 minutes, each one making him tense, his fingers gripping the steering wheel a little tighter. "Who's texting you on a Saturday?" I asked, keeping my tone light, though my stomach churned. He shrugged, eyes fixed on the road. "Probably just Chris, sending me stupid group chat stuff." But I knew Chris, his college buddy, wasn't the type to bombard him with messages. Chris was all about fantasy football and the occasional beer night, not rapid-fire texts. Ethan's voice had that slight pitch, the one he used when he was hiding something. After 2 years, I knew his tells, the way he avoided my gaze, the way his shoulders stiffened. Still, I let it slide, not wanting to start a fight before Claire's wedding. The venue was a dream, a sprawling estate nestled among rolling vineyards, with rose-covered arches and ancient oaks framing the scene. Claire had planned every detail to perfection. White roses spilling over trellises, a string quartet playing softly, and golden sunlight filtering through the trees, casting everything in a warm, ethereal glow. I squeezed Ethan's arm as we stepped onto the manicured lawn. "Isn't this magical?" I said, my heart swelling with pride for my sister. Ethan nodded, but his eyes weren't on the flowers or the twinkling lights. They were scanning the crowd, searching for something, or someone. That whisper in my head grew louder, a warning I couldn't shake. We found our seats near the back, a subtle reminder that I wasn't quite part of the inner circle. Claire was the golden child, the one who'd always had our parents' undivided attention. I didn't resent her for it. She was my best friend, my confidant, but it stung to feel like an afterthought at her wedding. Ethan sat beside me, his phone still buzzing, his fingers twitching like he wanted to check it but knew better. I tried to focus on the ceremony, on the way Claire's gown shimmered as she walked down the aisle, on the way Nathan's face lit up when he saw her. It was everything a wedding should be. Romantic, hopeful, a promise of forever. I reached for Ethan's hand during the vows, expecting the warm squeeze he usually gave me during emotional moments. Instead, his palm was clammy, his fingers restless, and I caught him sneaking a glance at his phone. As the officiant spoke of love and commitment, I felt a pang of longing. I'd imagined Ethan and me standing there someday, promising forever. But his distraction, his distance, made that dream feel fragile. I pushed the thought away, telling myself it was just nerves, just the pressure of meeting my extended family. I wanted to believe we were still solid, that 2 years of building a life together meant something. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. And soon, I'd find out just how wrong. The ceremony ended with applause and happy tears, guests rising to follow the couple into the reception hall. The space was breathtaking, chandeliers dripping with crystals, floor-to-ceiling windows letting in the golden sunset, and tables adorned with white roses and delicate glassware. I introduced Ethan to my aunts, my cousins, my childhood friend Mia who'd flown in from Chicago. Each time someone commented on what a great couple we made, my chest warmed with pride. "You're so lucky, Olivia," my Aunt Susan said, her eyes twinkling. "He's a keeper." Ethan played the part perfectly. Charming smiles, firm handshakes, witty small talk. But I noticed the way his eyes kept drifting, scanning the room like he was waiting for a signal. When my Uncle Tom asked Ethan if he was thinking about proposing, I expected a playful dodge, maybe a laugh. Instead, Ethan's face tightened, a flash of panic crossing his features. "We're just taking things one day at a time," he said, his voice clipped, his hand slipping from mine. My stomach twisted, but I forced a smile, telling myself he was just nervous about the spotlight. I didn't want to see the cracks forming, didn't want to admit that the man I loved was pulling away. Ethan excused himself to get us drinks, and I watched him weave through the crowd, his confident stride now making me uneasy. The bar was, across the hall, a sleek setup with a bartender mixing cocktails under a cascade of fairy lights. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I scanned the crowd, expecting to see Ethan caught in conversation with one of Nathan's groomsmen. But he wasn't there. The bartender was alone, serving other guests. No sign of Ethan. My heart began to race, that whisper in my head now a shout. When he finally reappeared, his hair was slightly mussed, his expression flustered, like he'd been running or arguing. No drinks in hand. "Line was too long," he muttered, avoiding my eyes, his voice tight. Then I saw it. A smear of bright red lipstick on his collar, vivid against the crisp white of his shirt. Not my shade. I don't wear red. My heart sank, a cold weight settling in my chest. "What's that on your shirt?" I asked, my voice steady despite the tremor inside me. Ethan's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're being paranoid, Olivia," he snapped, his tone sharp enough to cut. "This is Claire's day. Don't make it about you." It was classic Ethan, turning the tables, making me feel small for noticing. I'd seen it before. When I'd asked about late nights at the office, when I'd questioned why he was so secretive with his phone, he'd always twist it, make me doubt my instincts. I swallowed hard, my hands shaking as I smoothed my dress, trying to focus on the celebration. But the room felt smaller, the air thicker. Then I saw her. Across the hall, near a window where the sunset painted everything gold, stood a woman who could have walked out of a fashion shoot. Tall, with sleek black hair cascading over her shoulders. She wore a crimson dress that hugged her frame, drawing every eye in the room. She was laughing, her head tilted back, her energy magnetic. And she was looking at Ethan with a smile that made my blood freeze. I knew who she was before my brain caught up. Isabella, Ethan's ex from college. The one he'd mentioned in passing, always with a wistful tone he swore meant nothing. The one whose name still popped up in his social media likes, despite his insistence they were just friends. Claire had mentioned her maid of honor, an old college friend who worked in fashion in New York. It hadn't clicked until now, but the pieces fell together with sickening clarity. Isabella was here. and Ethan's distraction, his restlessness, suddenly made sense. I watched, my heart pounding, as he crossed the room to her, not even glancing back at me. Their hug wasn't friendly. It was intimate, lingering, the kind that spoke of shared history and unresolved feelings. The chatter around me faded, the clinking glasses distant. This couldn't be happening. Not at my sister's wedding, not in front of my entire family. But it was. I followed them outside to a stone balcony overlooking the vineyard, my pulse hammering in my ears. The air was cool, scented with roses and the faint tang of wine barrels. Through the glass doors, I saw Ethan and Isabella standing, close, his hands on her shoulders, his voice low and urgent. She was smiling, her eyes locked on his, like they were the only two people in the world. I pushed the door open, my heels clicking on the stone, just in time to hear him say, "I never stopped thinking about you, Iz. Being with Olivia showed me what I was missing." The words hit like a physical blow, stealing my breath. 2 years of my life. 2 years of late-night talks, shared dreams, compromises, reduced to nothing. I stepped forward, my voice trembling but clear. "What did you just say?" Ethan turned, his face a mix of shock and defiance, no trace of shame. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said, his tone sharp. "You wouldn't get it, Olivia. What I had with Isabella was different, real." My chest tightened, the air thin. "Real?" I echoed, my voice barely above a whisper. 2 years, Ethan. Was that nothing? He rolled his eyes, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. "You're being dramatic," he said. "Isabella, and I have history. You can't compete with that." I felt the ground shift beneath me. "Choose," I said, my voice breaking. "Right now." He didn't hesitate. "Her," he said, nodding toward Isabella, who stood there, her expression unreadable. My world tilted, the fairy lights blurring through tears. I stumbled back into the reception hall, mascara streaking my face, my green dress suddenly feeling too tight, too exposed. Guests had seen the whole thing through the glass doors, their whispers spreading like wildfire. My cousin Emma approached, her face full of pity, her hand reaching for mine. "Olivia, are you okay?" she asked, her voice soft. I waved her off, unable to speak. I couldn't face Claire, couldn't let my heartbreak ruin her perfect day. Then I saw him, Lucas, Nathan's best man, standing across the room. Tall, with warm hazel eyes and a quiet strength. He'd been a steady presence all day, helping, with small tasks, calming nervous guests. I'd barely spoken to him, just a quick introduction during the rehearsal dinner. But now he was watching me, his expression not pity but anger, like he was furious on my behalf. He crossed the room, his steps deliberate, and handed me a handkerchief without a word. "You don't have to explain," he said, his voice calm but firm, cutting through the chaos in my head. "And you don't have to stand here while people stare." His words were simple, but they grounded me, like a lifeline in a storm. He wasn't trying to fix me or tell me everything would be okay. He was just there, seeing me in a way Ethan never had. When the band struck up a slow song, he held out his hand. "Want to show them you're not broken?" he asked, a hint of a smile in his eyes. I hesitated, my instinct to flee, to hide in my apartment and cry until I couldn't anymore. But something in Lucas's steady gaze sparked a defiance I hadn't felt in months. Why should I be the one running? Why should Ethan's betrayal define me? I took his hand, my fingers trembling, and stepped onto the dance floor, choosing myself for the first time that day. Dancing with Lucas was like stepping into a different version of myself, one I'd forgotten existed. He moved with an easy confidence, guiding me across the floor with a gentleness that made me feel graceful, not clumsy. The band played a soft jazz tune, the notes wrapping around us like a warm blanket. For the first time in hours, I laughed, real, unguarded laughter that bubbled up from somewhere deep, startling me with its lightness. Lucas smiled, his hazel eyes crinkling at the corners, and I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in months: hope. He told me about his work as a documentary filmmaker, traveling to places like Senegal and Iceland to capture stories of resilience and joy. His voice was warm, his stories vivid, painting pictures of people who'd faced hardship and found light. Then he shared something personal, his own heartbreak, when his fiancée left him for a colleague 2 years ago. The worst part wasn't losing her, he said as we swayed to the music, his voice low enough for only me to hear. It was realizing I'd dimmed myself to fit her idea of me. I'd forgotten who I was. His words hit like lightning. I'd done the same with Ethan. Muted my laughter, softened my opinions, tried to be the perfect girlfriend he wanted. I'd stopped singing off-key in the car, stopped wearing my quirky thrift store finds, stopped being the Olivia who danced in her kitchen to old Motown records. Dancing with Lucas, I felt that Olivia stirring, waking up. I wasn't just Ethan's girlfriend. I was me, messy and loud and enough. The photographer circled us, snapping candid shots I didn't notice at the time. Later, I'd see those photos, me, smiling, my head tilted back, my eyes bright with life. I looked like I belonged, not like the broken woman who'd stumbled off the balcony. My family noticed, too. My Aunt Susan whispered to my mom, "Look at Olivia. She's glowing." Claire's friends, tipsy on champagne, asked who the handsome stranger was, their giggles carrying across the room. For the first time in months, I felt seen, not as Ethan's accessory, but as Olivia, whole and vibrant. Then Ethan reappeared. He stood at the edge of the dance floor, his suit rumpled, his face drawn. Isabella was gone, and from the slump of his shoulders, I could tell their reunion hadn't gone as planned. He started toward us, his expression a mix of determination and desperation, the look he always got when he wanted forgiveness. "Can I cut in?" he said, his voice dripping with entitlement, as if I were still his to claim. "I need to talk to my girlfriend." Lucas didn't flinch. He looked Ethan, up and down, his expression calm but unyielding. "I think you mean your ex-girlfriend," he said, his voice steady. "She's busy." Ethan's jaw dropped, his confidence crumbling. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not in front of a crowd. I felt a surge of strength, a fire I hadn't known I had. "You made your choice, Ethan," I said, my voice clear and firm. "You picked Isabella. How'd that work out?" His face told the story. Isabella had rejected him, probably tired of being his fallback plan. He stammered, trying to argue, his voice rising. "We need to talk, Olivia. You're overreacting." But I was done. "No," I said, stepping closer to Lucas. "You don't get to decide what I feel anymore. Go." The guests nearby watched, some with wide eyes, others with knowing smiles. Ethan slunk away, his head down, his charm shattered. The reception continued, the band shifting to an upbeat swing tune. But the energy in the room had changed. Guests whispered about the drama on the balcony, their glances a mix of pity and curiosity. I didn't care. Dancing with Lucas, I felt untouchable, like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself I'd lost. Claire caught my eye from across the room, her smile soft but worried. I knew she'd heard about Ethan, and I hated that my heartbreak had spilled into her day. But before she could reach me, she was pulled into a photo with Nathan, her laughter ringing out. Lucas and I kept dancing, his stories keeping me grounded. He told me about a documentary he'd filmed in a small Peruvian village, where women wove intricate tapestries to preserve their history. They didn't care about perfection, he said. They cared about telling their truth. His words stayed with me, a reminder that my truth mattered too, even if it was messy. Claire's speech came later, her voice warm and steady as she thanked everyone for sharing their day. Then she turned to me, her eyes shining. "I'm so grateful to see my sister Olivia shining tonight," she said. "Meeting Lucas has reminded me why she deserves someone who sees her for the incredible woman she is." The crowd clapped, a wave of support washing over me. I caught Ethan hovering near the exit, his face red with humiliation, his eyes darting to the floor. Lucas leaned in, his voice low. "I know this is forward, but I'd love to take you out when I'm back in town. Interested?" His confidence, the way he didn't care who heard, made my heart race. "Yes," I said, smiling, my voice steady for the first time all night. Ethan's face twisted, his realization dawning. Not just that he'd lost me, but that he'd lost me to someone who saw my worth without me begging for it. The rest of the night was a blur of dancing, laughter, and stolen glances with Lucas. My family rallied around me, their support a quiet strength. My cousin Emma whispered that Ethan had left alone, looking like he'd been punched. I didn't care. For the first time, I wasn't chasing his approval or trying to fix what he'd broken. I was just me, and that was enough. Driving home, the vineyard fading in the rearview mirror, I felt lighter, like I'd shed a weight I'd carried too long. Lucas texted me later, asking if I'd meant what I said about dinner. I smiled, typing back, "Absolutely." The wedding photos arrived a week later, a visual timeline of the night. Me crying alone at a table, then dancing with Lucas, then laughing, my head thrown back in joy. My favorite was the one where Ethan tried to cut in, my face calm and indifferent. Lucas steady beside me, a quiet protector. Months passed, and the wedding became a legend in my family, a story told with a mix of shock and pride. Ethan tried reaching out, 12 texts, 7 voicemails, each one more desperate than the last. I didn't respond, and eventually I blocked his number. He was still single, posting try-hard updates on social media, photos of him at bars, grinning too wide, captioned with vague quotes about living his best life. It was pathetic, and I felt nothing but relief. Isabella, I heard through Claire, was engaged to a tech mogul in New York, living the glamorous life she'd always chased. She'd moved on, leaving Ethan in the dust, just as I had. Karma had a way of working things out. Lucas and I started dating long distance, his visits to my city filled with late-night talks over coffee, walks through the park, and quiet moments where I felt truly seen. He was everything Ethan wasn't: honest, present, unafraid to show he cared. He was moving to my city soon, and we'd been looking at apartments, not because we needed to rush, but because we wanted to build something real. I kept one of the wedding photos on my desk, a shot of me and Lucas dancing, my smile wide, his eyes warm with admiration. It reminded me of the moment I reclaimed myself, not as Ethan's girlfriend, but as Olivia, whole and enough. Claire called it the night. "You became unstoppable," and I laughed, but she wasn't wrong. I'd found my strength, and I wasn't letting it go. I thought back to the days after the wedding, when I'd sat in my apartment, replaying Ethan's words on the balcony. I'd felt so small, so unworthy. But Lucas's quiet support, his refusal to let me shrink, had changed everything. He didn't save me. I saved myself. He just reminded me I was worth saving. I started singing in the car again, wearing my quirky earrings, dancing in my kitchen to Motown. I was Olivia again, and it felt like coming home. Looking back, I realized how long I'd let Ethan dim my light, how I'd shaped myself to fit his idea of me. I'd thought love meant compromise, but I'd compromised too much. My voice, my joy, my truth. That night at Claire's wedding, I learned that love doesn't mean shrinking. It means standing tall, even when it's messy. Lucas didn't just give me a dance. He gave me a mirror to see my own strength. And I did the rest. The aftermath wasn't easy. My family reached out, some with apologies for not seeing Ethan's flaws sooner, others with stories of their own heartbreaks. My mom, usually so reserved, admitted she'd never liked Ethan, but hadn't wanted to interfere. "You deserved better," she said, her voice soft. "I'm glad you found it." Their support, coupled with Lucas's steady presence, helped me rebuild. I started a new project at work, took up painting again, and even planned a solo trip to New Orleans, something I'd always wanted to do, but had put off for Ethan. The wedding photos became a kind of talisman, a reminder of my transformation. In one, I'm alone, tears streaking my face, my shoulders hunched. In another, I'm dancing with Lucas, my head thrown back, laughter lighting up my eyes. And in my favorite, I'm facing Ethan, my expression calm and resolute, Lucas at my side like a quiet sentinel. Those images told the story of a woman who'd been broken but refused to stay that way. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been betrayed or found the courage to rise above it, give this a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it, someone who's still finding their strength. Drop a comment. Have you ever had to walk away from someone who didn't see your worth? Or found someone who did? I read every comment and want to hear your story. Subscribe for more real stories that remind us we're not alone, and hit the notification bell so you never miss one. Your voice matters, especially when it shines.